There is a level of self-control that doesn't look like effort. It looks like possession. Most men negotiate with themselves. They wake up and ask their feelings for permission to act. That is not discipline. That is a slow-motion suicide of the soul. There is a threshold where a man stops trying to be better and starts being something else entirely, something colder, something more precise. To the average person, this level of consistency is terrifying. They call it obsessive. They call it unhealthy. They call it that because they need to believe your results are a sickness rather than a choice they were too soft to make. This isn't about grind culture. This isn't about a 3-day streak of cold showers. This is about the total automation of excellence. This is about the death of the person you used to be. By the end of this, you will either realize you are ready to burn your old life down, or you will realize you never had the stomach for it. This isn't for everyone. Raphael lived in the cycle. You know the one. Monday starts with a scream of ambition. He wakes up at 5 a.m., fueled by the ghost of a person he thinks he should be. He drinks the water. He hits the gym. He feels the surge of a fresh start. He tells himself, this time is different. By Wednesday, the scream is a whisper. The alarm goes off and suddenly the bed feels like a sanctuary, and the world feels like a threat. He bargains. I'll work twice as hard tonight if I sleep an extra hour now. He negotiates with a version of himself that is designed to lose. By Friday, the cycle is dead. Raphael is back to the baseline. He sits on the couch scrolling through the lives of men who actually did the work, feeling a toxic cocktail of envy and self-loathing. He tells his friends he's resetting for next week. He tells his girlfriend he's just burnt out. He uses big words to justify small actions. He wasn't a bad person. He wasn't even lazy in the traditional sense. He was just a victim of the great illusion, the belief that he could think his way into a new life. He believed that if he just found the right quote, the right video, or the right spark, the fire would stay lit forever. He wasn't weak. He was fighting something he didn't understand. The shift didn't happen when Raphael tried harder. It happened when he stopped trying and started submitting. He discovered an ancient concept, a Zen architecture for soul known as Guji. In the monasteries of old, Guji wasn't a suggestion. It was the structural integrity of the self. It is the art of continuous practice without gaps. But the secret of Guji isn't in the effort. It is in the removal of the exit. Centuries ago, when a man entered the path of the samurai or the monk, he didn't make a New Year's resolution. He engaged in an irreversible commitment. In our modern world, everything is reversible. We try a diet, we test a routine. We leave the door cracked open just wide enough for our cowardice to slip through when things get difficult. The system of the unbreakable person relies on a psychological bridge burning. In the ancient rites, a practitioner would make a public declaration, not for the sake of ego, but to create a social death. To fail was not to be off track, it was to cease to exist as the person you claimed to be. This is the difference between a preference and an identity. A person with a preference for fitness will skip the gym when it rains. A person whose identity is the one who never misses doesn't even see the rain. The neuroscience of this is brutal and binary. When you negotiate with yourself, you create cognitive friction. Every time you ask, should I do this today? You drain your prefrontal cortex of the very energy required to actually do the task. You are leaking fuel before the engine even starts. The masters of Guji understood that freedom is the greatest lie told to the weak. Choice is a burden. Decision is a leak. The most disciplined men on earth do not have more willpower than you. They have fewer choices than you. They don't wake up and decide to work. They don't decide to eat clean. They don't decide to remain calm under pressure. They have already decided. The decision was made years ago, or months ago, or this morning at 4 a.m. When you move from behavior to identity, you stop being a person who is trying to be disciplined, and you become the discipline itself. You become a ritual in motion. At this level, consistency isn't something you do, it is the witness to who you are. Even with the system in place, the body is a traitor. Raphael soon learned that identity does not immediately silence biology. Your brain is a survival machine, not a success machine. It is hardwired for the path of least resistance. It wants the sugar, the sleep, and the safety of the cave. When you commit to Guji, you are declaring war on millions of years of evolutionary instinct. The internal war doesn't happen on a battlefield, it happens in the silence of the 2 p.m. slump. It happens in the nanosecond between the alarm and the movement. Raphael began to feel the physical weight of his resistance. It felt like a thick gray sludge in his veins. His mind would become a world-class lawyer, arguing for recovery, whispering that one day won't matter, and suggesting that balance is the mark of a mature man. This is the friction of the soul. Most people interpret this friction as a sign to stop. They think, if it feels this wrong, I must be overdoing it. But in the system of the unbreakable, friction is the fuel. It is the heat generated by the old self being ground down by the gears of the new one. Raphael stopped viewing his thoughts as his own. He began to see them as external noise, the dying screams of his weaker half. He introduced the concept of fixed time. Between the hours of 5 a.m. and 9 a.m., the person named Raphael did not exist. Only the system existed. There was no negotiation because there was no one to negotiate with. He described the resistance as a physical wall. Every day he would walk up to that wall and lean his entire weight against it. He didn't try to climb it or break it in one blow. He just applied constant, unyielding pressure. He felt his energy draining, his focus blurring, and his muscles screaming for a reprieve. He was learning that discipline isn't the absence of struggle, it is the choice of which struggle you are willing to endure. He ended the day exhausted, his mind still buzzing with the leftovers of 1,000 tiny battles. He hadn't won the war yet. He had only won the right to fight again tomorrow. The world will try to sell you the lie of variety. It will tell you that the spice of life is what keeps a man going. This is a trap. For Raphael, the path to becoming unbreakable required the destruction of options. Variety is the playground of the distracted. Excellence, however, is a monotonous, repetitive, and narrow corridor. The system of Guji demands that you find the one way and stay there until the path itself disappears. You must eliminate the question of what should I do. If you have to ask what's for breakfast, what the workout is, or what the priority of the day is, you have already lost. You are wasting cognitive bandwidth on the trivial. Raphael began to simplify. He wore the same clothes. He ate the same meals. He followed the same sequence of movements every single morning. His life began to look like a rulebook rather than a story. It was dogmatic. It was rigid. It was, to any outside observer, incredibly boring. This is where the social pressure begins. When you stop participating in the common chaos, people get nervous. Raphael's friends started to mock him. They called him the monk. They asked him why he couldn't just relax for one night. They worried aloud that he was losing his personality. What they didn't understand is that annoying is a feature, not a bug. If your discipline doesn't annoy people who have none, you aren't doing it right. If your lifestyle doesn't make normal people uncomfortable, you are still playing by their rules. The social friction is actually a diagnostic tool. When people mock your consistency, they are actually confessing their own inadequacy. They are trying to pull you back into the crab bucket because your ascent highlights their stillness. Raphael learned to embrace the awkward silences at dinner. He learned to welcome the labels. The one way means there is no plan B. There is no if this doesn't work. There is only the repetition of the system until the results become inevitable. You don't need a new strategy every week. You need the courage to be boring. You need the stomach to do the same high-value task 10,000 times while the rest of the world is busy chasing the next shiny distraction. The core of the Guji system is the elimination of the gap. In the mind of the weak, progress is a series of fits and starts. They sprint, they crash, they recover, and they repeat. They believe in the all-or-nothing fallacy. If they cannot spend 2 hours at the gym, they spend 0. If they miss one meal, they throw away the weekend. They allow the gap to swallow their momentum. But a river does not stop flowing because it encounters a rock. It flows over it, around it, or through it. The water never negotiates with the obstacle. It simply maintains the current. This is the secret of the unbreakable person. The moment the practice stops, it dies. Raphael learned that a gap is a psychological infection. 1 missed day is a mistake. 2 missed days is a new habit. To maintain Guji, you must redefine what it means to rest. Rest is not a retreat from the path. It is a strategic pause on the path. You do not stop being the disciplined version of yourself just because it is Sunday, or because you are traveling, or because you are sick. The blade does not lose its edge when it is in the sheath. It remains sharp, ready for the moment it is drawn. Raphael treated his discipline like a fire. If you stop feeding a fire for even a few hours, the embers die. To restart a dead fire takes immense energy that most men do not have. But to keep a fire roaring requires only a steady, rhythmic addition of fuel. He stopped looking for the finish line. He realized that the practice is the destination. There is no arriving at a state of self-control. There is only the continuous, gapless application of the system. The strength is not in the intensity of the single act, but in the unbreakable nature of the chain. When you kill the gaps, you kill the opportunity for doubt to enter your mind. You become a singular force of nature. The amateur waits for a crisis to test his character. The architect of self-control knows the crisis is coming and has already strangled it in its sleep. This is the stage of pre-solutions. Raphael realized that his past failures weren't due to a lack of heart, but a lack of logistics. He was relying on his future self to be a hero, but his future self was usually tired, hungry, and stressed. In the elite systems of the world, from the silent monasteries of the East to the Tier 1 military units of the West, nothing is left to chance. They operate on a logic of if-then protocols. This is the antidote to decision fatigue. Neuroscience tells us that every choice we make, no matter how small, erodes our willpower. By the time an unexpected obstacle hits you at 5 p.m., your mental reserves are bankrupt. Raphael stopped deciding. He started programming. He built a fortress of pre-solutions. When he felt the urge to procrastinate, the answer was already written. 5 minutes of movement, no exceptions. When he was invited to an event that conflicted with his deep work hours, the answer already existed, a polite, immediate no. When he traveled, his workout was already scaled for a hotel room. There was no discussion. There was no internal debate. The answer was a pre-recorded line of code in his brain. Think of it as a monastery for the mind. A monk doesn't wake up and wonder if he will pray today. The bell rings and the body moves. The bell is the pre-solution. Raphael identified his friction points, the specific moments where his discipline usually leaked. He found that his phone was a portal for weakness, so he locked it in a timed safe every night at 9 p.m. He found that social pressure made him eat poorly, so he pre-ordered his meals before he even arrived at the restaurant. This is not tips and tricks. This is strategic warfare against your own biology. You must assume your future self is a coward who will look for any excuse to quit. You must build a cage of systems so tight that even a coward would succeed within them. When you eliminate the need to think under stress, you eliminate the possibility of failure. You are no longer a person trying to navigate a storm. You are the captain who charted the course while the sea was still calm. When the waves hit, you don't need to be brave, you just need to follow the map you already drew. There is no discussion, the answer already exists. The transformation of Raphael was not a loud event. It was a quiet, cold, and final shifting of the tectonic plates of his identity. One morning he woke up and realized the resistance was gone, not because the work had become easier, but because he had become heavier than his excuses. He had attained the level of self-control that breaks weak men, the level where effort is replaced by inevitability. He no longer recognized the man who bargained with alarms or sought validation from the crowd. That man had died in the repetition. He had been burned away by the friction of Gucci. Now, when Raphael moved, the paper had been much more disciplined. He didn't need to get motivated. He was the source of the heat. The world reacted differently now. The mockery from his peers had turned into a strange, distant respect. They stopped inviting him to waste his time, because they knew the answer was already a no. They looked at his consistency and felt a chill, because his life served as a mirror to their own lack of direction. He had become an outlier, a mythic figure in his own circle. This is the end of the initiation. You have been shown the architecture of the unbreakable. You have seen that discipline is not a burden to be carried, but a skin to be grown. Discomfort is no longer a warning to stop. It is the signal that you are winning. If you are ready to kill the person you were to become the person you are meant to be, then state it. Do not leave a comment about how motivated you feel. Motivation is for the weak. Leave a declaration of your new identity. He doesn't do it anymore. He is it.